Pikmin. Chances are you know what it is. Whether you are a longtime fan of the series or just recently became one with Pikmin 4, you know just how wonderful this series is. Pikmin 3 is my second favorite game of all time, and the other games are not very far behind. They're all at least in my top 10. I've sunk hundreds of hours into all of these games, across many playthroughs, speedruns, and honestly, from just goofing around and exploring its vast open worlds. I absolutely adore these games in every way, so I think if anyone knew where they belonged on a tier list, it would be me. Let's get to the list. Number 1, Pikmin 3. Pikmin 3 is the best Pikmin game in the series by far, and I think a lot of people will agree with me here, unlike in my Luigi's Mansion video where I said Dark Moon was the best. Go watch that video if you haven't, by the way, it's amazing. Pikmin 3 was the most popular Pikmin game before Pikmin 4, selling over 1.28 million copies. Compared to something like New Super Mario Bros. On the Wii, it's not that much, but for a small game series like Pikmin, this was fantastic, especially since it was on the Wii U, one of Nintendo's least selling consoles. So in the previous Pikmin games, you follow Olimar and his company, Hakotate Freight. Now, I know it's pronounced Hakotate Freight, but I refuse to call it that. It's going to be Hakotate Freight. And their adventures on the planet PNF 404. I'll talk more about it when those games come up, but in this, we follow 3 Kopite explorers from the planet Kopai in their quest to find food for their planet, which is in a worldwide famine due to some terrible decisions. They end up crashing on the planet, didn't see that one coming, and use Pikmin to find food and escape. A lot of people aren't in love with the fact that we don't follow Olimar in this game, but I really don't mind, since I find the 3 new Kopite explorers to be lovable and relatable. And for those who don't like the 3 Kopites, don't worry, because Olimar still plays an extremely important role in the story by leaving little notes around the world and being the reason the final boss even happens. The story is great, by the way. Throughout the game, the characters will have multiple times where they speak, whether that be in cutscenes or just the dialogue in the aftership notes. The characters are very charming to me, if you couldn't already tell. Now let's get on to the gameplay. It's just like any other Pikmin game. You walk around, make Pikmin, and then throw those Pikmin at things to progress through the story. If you're playing on the Wii U, you can use the Wii pointer controls for the Pikmin. This just feels right. In every other prior game in the series, you had to use the joystick to aim Pikmin and to move your captain, which did work, just it didn't feel nearly as natural as the pointer controls on the Wii U. This just makes gameplay feel so smooth. Now, let's talk about the different worlds in Pikmin 3. Oh my god, what a massive improvement over Pikmin 2. The maps just look so much nicer, absolutely massive compared to those in Pikmin 1 and 2. They have so much more detail and are just stunning and amazing in almost every way. So much creativity and love was put into every little nook and cranny. To really show you, the SS Drake alone has more polygons than the entire first Pikmin game, so there is a lot of detail in this game. Now, let's talk about the absolutely fantastic boss fights. They are, in my opinion, the highlight of this game. The boss music is just amazing. It even changes depending on what happens in the fight, similarly to Pikmin 2 Cave's music. Watch Scruffy's video on it. It's a wonderfully informative video if you want more information on how Pikmin's boss music works. It is a fantastic video. Definitely go check it out. The bosses themselves are also unique and memorable. They all fit the areas they are in and just look so good. You have the Armored Maudad, the Quaggled Mireclops, the Behemoth Fossbat, the Scornet Maestro, and the Plasm Wraith. Speaking of the Plasm Wraith, let's talk about that. The Plasm Wraith is this gold transforming blob, and experiencing it and the area it resides in is so scary, you might as well be playing a horror game. It lives in the last area of the game, the Formidable Oak. From the moment you land, you realize something is off. You look around and you see nothing. No pellet posies, no creatures of any type, just the brown wood of the dying oak tree. You walk through the only way that you can, and then you spot something. It's Olimar, the man you've been chasing throughout the whole game. Except when you get closer, he gets engulfed by this mysterious golden blob. You throw a couple of Pikmin, and it dies right away, no problem. You pick up Olimar, who's been knocked unconscious by his spacesuit, But when you try and take him back to the Drake, you realize that you can't go back with him. This only gives you one option: to progress through the dying oak tree. Okay, that's all fine and dandy. So you walk in, and then the blob is back for more. Except this time, when you try to attack it, your attacks are futile. So what do? Chances are, you did nothing. You sat and waited to see what would happen. The blob gets closer and closer, and the music is ramping up and up. And your characters are screaming for you to run, and then it happens. The blob finally gets Olimar. It suddenly shines and starts moving as fast as it can, and your Pikmin can finally attack it, but alas, it escapes with Olimar. With nothing else to do, you return to the Drake and return to the Oak the next day, only to see Olimar right where he started the day prior. You grab him, but this time you know you have to run. You run deeper into the tree and find an enemy. You likely kill it, and then something happens. The enemy turns into goo and disintegrates. Oh my god. You realize these things are simply illusions put on by the Plasm Wraith, which puts everything from every Pikmin game into question. Has any of it ever been real? Or was it all just an illusion created by the Plasm Wraith? Something else happens after the enemy disintegrates. You cannot take its body back to the onion. This means that if a Pikmin dies, it really is going to affect you, because that Pikmin is gone for good. You can't make any more. If you lose enough Pikmin, you are just toast, doomed to starve in this oaky prison and leave your species with nothing but death in your wake. But if this doesn't happen, you traverse through the oak tree, which will take multiple days, and you finally fight the scariest boss in Pikmin history, the Plasm Wraith. You can finally defeat the creature that has turned this game into a psychological horror experience. You fight it, slowly destroying it piece by piece until it finally dies. All is now well. Olimar wakes up, gives you the cosmic drive key, and you all go home. But then you see something. It's back. The Plasm Wraith never died, so it still lives, waiting to capture some other poor explorer. And I am now realizing that this has turned into a video about the formidable oak, and I'm going to shut up now. From my not-so-simple explanation of the formidable oak, I would hope you can see how amazing it is. Even though it easily carries Pikmin 3, by itself by the way, to its top-tier status, the rest of the game is still amazing and creative, and it would still be my favorite Pikmin game, even if the formidable oak wasn't a thing. So, 100%, check this out. Number 2. Pikmin 2. Wow! This game is an amazing improvement over Pikmin 1 in almost every way. It's visually impressive for the GameCube, especially compared to the first game. The overworld sections are much more complex and nicer looking. Oh, and before I forget, let me mention that you can finally switch between Pikmin that you were holding. In the first game, you have to wade through your masses of Pikmin and hope that you would grab the Pikmin color that you wanted. It's very annoying. Pikmin 2? They noticed this, and they added a feature that allows you to switch through the Pikmin colors via the D-pad. Speaking of Pikmin, Pikmin 2 added 2 new types. You have the standard, red, blue, and yellow, but you also have purple and white Pikmin. Purple Pikmin are big chunky boys who are extremely overpowered. They deal a whole lot of damage, similarly to the rock Pikmin from Pikmin 3, but these guys can hold on to their enemies and continuously hit them, unlike the rock Pikmin from Pikmin 3. They also have a not-so-small chance to stun enemies that they land on, making even a boss a joke if you have enough of these guys. They can also carry 10 times the amount of any other Pikmin. I mean, just look at these absolute units! Next, we have the much less overpowered white Pikmin. These guys are small, really fast, and are poisonous to an enemy that eats them. They also have really, really big eyes. These big eyes allow them to see underground. This is necessary, because many treasures you will run into will be underground. Speaking of treasures, the story in this game is Olimar's company Hagate Freight is failing because his new partner, Louis, ended up eating all the golden pick carrots that the company had, which apparently was worth way too much money. This leads the president to send Olimar and Louis back to PNF 404 to get items that Hagate Freight can turn into enough money to bring the company out of bankruptcy. You learn this from a fully animated cutscene with voice acting, which just adds so much personality to the characters. Alright, now for what you've all been waiting for. Pikmin 2 added freaking caves. Remember how I mentioned the overworld? That's because the caves bring you into these completely different underground areas. These areas play completely differently from the overworld. You can no longer make Pikmin or switch types, which really makes you feel every Pikmin loss, similarly to the formidable oak. In the caves, you traverse these individual levels, with you going deeper and deeper as you progress. The caves are also randomly generated, which is really impressive for the time that this game came out. These are also the only places you can get purple and white Pikmin, as they don't have onions. I'm definitely not doing this game justice with my explanation here. I just genuinely can't think of anything else to say. This game is just absolutely fantastic, and it is a must play for not even just Pikmin fans, literally anybody. Number 3, Pikmin 4. Now, just put down your pitchforks. Put down your pitchforks. I can hear everybody asking why this game is so far down on the list. Let me just say that Pikmin 3 is the only Pikmin game that I think is miles better than every other one. So trust me, if every other game could be tied with each other, they would be. Understand that I love this game and what it has done for the Pikmin franchise. It is the best-selling game by far and has brought so many new people to the Pikmin series. It's probably the greatest game in the series. I just don't enjoy it as much as Pikmin 2 or 3. I'll start with what I don't like. It feels like a lot of the creativity from the previous games has just completely been sucked out. The easiest way to see this is by looking at the font. All the previous games have this sort of bubbly alien writing, but Pikmin 4 swaps this out for futuristic text. The onion is also, man, it's just so ugly. I feel like it just has no effort put into it compared to every other game's onions. And you got Pikmin 3, where the onions freaking mix, and you follow that up with this, where it's got segmented colors and it's fat and it's just ugly. And finally, I really hate the Dandori battles. Not the ones in the story mode, but the one that is used for the versus mode. It does not even compare to what the previous two games' versus mode was, especially not Pikmin 3's bingo battle. The Dandori battles remove most of the strategy from the marble battle from Pikmin 2, or the bingo battle from Pikmin 3. I would like to credit the YouTuber Silokhawk for what I'm about to say, as I think he stated the biggest problem with these battles perfectly. When playing Pikmin 3's bingo battle, most are pretty evenly matched, as it came down to who could strategize better, and not who had more experience, making it fun for everybody. Whereas Pikmin 4's Dandori battles give an extreme advantage to those who have sunk many hours in the game, which just isn't fun for anyone. It's just nowhere near as fun as the versus modes that came before it. This doesn't ruin the game, though, as the Dandori battles in the story provide a nice break from the standard laid-back Pikmin gameplay. And on to the final thing I don't like. Oh my god, the tutorial is mind-numbingly boring. All that happens is Colin running his mouth for years, and I absolutely hate everything about the tutorial. Except for Ochi, he's such a good boy. Alright, time for what I like. This game looks so good. Not quite Luigi's Mansion 3 level in my opinion, as that game blends cartoony and realistic perfectly. But this is definitely a close second. I mean, just go into any area and find some water, or look at some wet sand in the serene shores, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But visuals alone can only take a game so far. Now, let's talk about the gameplay. It's great. You technically still have two captains in the form of Ochi and your character, which allows you to sort of optimize gameplay, but there's a lot of things that Ochi can't do. Speaking of optimizing your gameplay, let's talk about the caves. Yes, you heard me right. This game brought back caves. This time, they are much shorter and are actually designed by a human. They're not randomly generated, which allows for more opportunities for puzzles and more fleshed out sublevels. I like this, as they allow you to truly optimize gameplay in the area that you know is going to be challenging, but to a fair degree. One of my biggest complaints about Pikmin 2 is the lack of time you spend in the overworld. But in Pikmin 4, the amount of time you spend in caves is very balanced with the amount of time that you spend in the overworld, as the caves are much shorter and the overworld areas are much bigger and expansive. Hold up, let's talk about those overworld areas. So you thought Pikmin 3's areas were big? Oh man, get ready for this. Pikmin 4's areas are so huge that they literally give you the option to move your base around the map, because if they didn't, you would never be able to come close to exploring a quarter of what every area has to offer. 100%ing this game is something I totally recommend, because exploring every little crack of these wonderfully crafted, absolutely massive worlds is just such a treat. Each area has so much love put into it, similarly to Pikmin 3. My final thing I have to say about Pikmin 4 is it is the longest game in the Pikmin series by far, taking a whopping minimum of 40 hours to 100%. I said minimum, okay? That's if you have played this game many times. If you're first starting out, this could easily take you double the amount of time. Each game before this took between 5 and 24 hours to complete. And here we have Pikmin 4, nearly doubling the length of Pikmin 2, which was previously the longest game in the series by far. Number 4, Pikmin 1. Let me get this out of the way, okay? I absolutely love this game, and it sits at a solid 8 out of 10 for me. It is my top 10 favorite games of all time. It's actually number 7. I don't have much to say, if I'm being honest. Let me tell you the story of the game. So this man named Oliver, right? He's just cruising along in space when suddenly he's struck by an asteroid and crashes on an unknown planet, where these plant creatures that he calls Pikmin because they resemble his favorite food help him rebuild his ship before his life support fails. The game is great. The gameplay was innovative, and it is still, it has aged so well. It is wonderful. Pretty much take what I said about Pikmin 3, and most of it applies here as well. I call Pikmin 3 Pikmin 1, 2 for a reason. There are only 2 reasons why this game is so low on my list. 1, there is zero way to switch between Pikmin types. Oh my god, it's so annoying. What you have to do is either disperse your Pikmin every time you want to pick a certain type, which just takes so much time, or you need to wade through your Pikmin and hope that you get the right color. The second thing I dislike is that this game is just too short. I understand that this was a new IP, funding was probably minimal, and they are working with the tiny disc that the GameCube had, but it is way too short for what it is. Whoops, I lied, I have one more thing. I think the music sucks. Now, the music by itself isn't terrible, but it is so short and it loops over and over and over and over and over. I hate it. I just hate the music now. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye. Sorry that second was too short.